Hello, welcome to episode 2 of the Home League Pod, where there is no you in league. We have a very special guest. You know him, you've known him. He is a one-time champ. He has made the top 3 2 separate occasions. He has made 3 playoff appearances over his career. He has 3 top 5 finishes, and he has a cool 69 and 78 all time. You know him as our commissioner, Dr. James Ferraro. Jimmy, please join us on the pod. All right, welcome. Oh, yes, gloat. Here, I'll get Jimmy's other team in there for everybody who's not
It's a good night. It's a good night. You know, to be an Eagles fan, to be a Yankees fan, it's a good night.
I'll take half of those. It's never really a good time to be an Eagles fan, though, as you know. All right, so welcome to the pod. Thank you for joining us. You are our second guest.
I'm honored to be here. I'll pretend not to be insulted that I wasn't the first guest, but that's okay.
It was a tight booking. We had limited resources available. All right, so we're going to dive right into it. We're going to get into ask you some questions about the team. We'll give a quick overview right now. You are sitting at 2-2, I believe, with a 2-week win streak. You're 5th in points. You are 6th in the power rankings, which I think the ESPN power rankings are a little bit broken, but that's another topic. You are looking at Bill next week, and you have made only 2 moves so far this season in the waivers. How are you feeling? What's going on?
You know, I'd say overall I'm feeling okay because if I'm honest, when I look at my roster, I'm not a fan. I have a lot of regrets from draft day. But I want to start off by saying that it feels like football is really kind of kicking into gear this week. We had 8 out of 12 matchups where teams scored over 90 points. 90 is like the new 100, just like 30 is the new 20, you know? So as we now see the injuries starting to pile up and bye weeks starting to happen, it's going to get really interesting. So I'm worried this week because I have bye weeks happening. I have injuries happening, down a bunch of receivers. I got guys that are underperforming, but I'm optimistic being 2-2. I am pleased to be 2-2. And I think, hopefully my team can stay level until I can make some trades.
Absolutely. So historically, Jimmy, the last couple of years been a little bit of a down year, a little down era for you, for your team. You've had 2 back-to-back 10th place finishes. Clearly some bad luck in there as always. Did that influence anything you were doing in the draft? Did you want to come into it with a different approach, or did you kind of think, hey, I'm going to keep doing my thing. I'm a former champ, and I just got to kind of keep doing the same thing until it pans out?
I don't think I can dwell on the championship anymore because it feels like that was a lifetime ago. I feel like we had different rules. I certainly didn't make as much money as the winner does these times around. But I did notice certain things about my drafting in the past that have cost me, specifically in the second round. The first 2 picks are really important. And if I look back, I've had picks like Chris Carson, who got hurt and his career ended in week 3, the year I drafted him in the second round. Michael Thomas, who got hurt the year I drafted him in the second round, was never the same. A couple years ago, Cam Akers, who just was not the guy on his own team when I drafted him. So ultimately, I was trying to nail that second round pick, and that's why I tried to, I thought, avoid risk. And that's why I didn't take who went right after me, Achane in the second round, or Puka, who you got in the second round. I thought Achane was an injury risk, and Puka, he's an injury risk. He gets hurt all the time, and he has this year. He's left 3 games with injury.
He left the last game with a thumb injury, which barely
Exactly.
Yeah.
But then he comes back and he's wide receiver 1. And then Stafford, too. I was too worried about those 2 things. So I went with what I thought was the safe pick in Drake London, a guy who's the number 1 receiver on his team, was doing well when Penix became the quarterback last year. And through, this is week 4, through 3 weeks, I was not happy with my second round pick. He did bounce back this week, which made me feel better. But I think ultimately my season kind of rides with how well he does because he's supposed to be my anchor at wide receiver, So if I don't have a number 1 wide receiver, I feel like I'm going to have to compensate in other areas. And right now, that my team's just not doing it.
All right. So let me ask you, rest of the season, who do you have more confidence in being your wide receiver 1, not including that last previous player, but between Marvin Harrison Jr. and Rome Odunze, your 4th and 6th round picks? Seems like you kind of, went to fill out that roster spot, and so far, as long as Marvin Harrison can continue playing like his last game, it might seem to work out. But are you more excited about one of those picks, or are you maybe skeptical of Rome Odunze and not really buying Marvin Harrison Jr.'s struggles, or are you thinking maybe it's the opposite and one is real?
Well, I feel like I've actually gotten lucky a few times over the years with these like mid to late round wide receivers. I drafted Randall Cobb the year he scored a touchdown like every game that he played. Jeremy Maclin the year that he broke out and when he was playing for Kansas City. So I'm really happy that I found a Dunze this year because last year he just kind of didn't show up despite being, a top 10 pick, I think he was in the draft. So he's been the difference maker for me. He's been my highest scoring wide receiver by far. He's been kind of up and down. I think last year, what did you call Marvin? Like the wild card on my team?
I believe so. Yeah, I think he was the wild part, maybe the linchpin. I had a couple different terms, but yeah, he was definitely someone who was going to be. You took a big gamble on him in the draft last year. Kind of actually paid more capital to acquire him last year. So really put a lot of pressure on him to perform right away.
Exactly, yeah. So I think, if he can maintain that kind of production and he can play up to a wide receiver 2 level like I was hoping he would, then hopefully, my receiving core can compensate again for the areas that I think my team struggles.
Absolutely. Favorite player in the team so far? Is it Roma Dunze just because of the value and performance?
No, it's got to be Jahmyr Gibbs.
Okay.
I mean, you can, I hate this because it's like an ESPN thing. You can't win your draft in the first round, but you can lose it in the first round. And I feel like he was worth the 5th pick.
Absolutely. All right. So it's good to catch up on your team. I want to start moving into the rest of the sections here. We are at 6.5 minutes already, but it was a good chat. Our next segment, and again, we encourage listeners to send in your questions to the HomeLeagePod Know You in League at gmail.com. But our first question comes from Annie, and her question is, and the section is called Questions from Your Wife or Girlfriend in parentheses. So, Jimmy, her question to you is, what do you think makes a good fantasy football team? Name.
Oh, okay. She definitely asked this because I make a big deal out of it every year. And I also kind of behind the scenes shit on all your team names because I think they're bad. To me, I think a team name should be one, and I think most people agree on this, based around some kind of player on your team.
Okay.
I think that's important. Not everyone goes with that, and I get that. You have your shtick with that.
Or player missing from your team.
6 or 7 years now, I think.
Not changing.
Yeah, which I get, and I think that's cool too. I think it should be based on a player on your team. And number 2, and one thing that most people don't abide by, I think it should be a team name. Like location mascot kind of situation. A couple years ago, I named my team the Godwinchester Night Herons. And no one really understood what that was. But, Winchester is a location, and a night heron is a bird. So, location bird, Godwin, Aaron, That's how it was supposed to be. So, My team name this year is the Capital City Jahmyr Cats. So, when I was making my team name, I was like, okay, I got a guy named London. I got a guy named Rome. This should be easy. Jahmyr Gibbs, Jahmyr Cats came to me pretty quickly. But then I was like, well, how do I pick which city? And then I realized, okay, I also have a guy named Washington on my team. I don't know if everyone knows their geography, but those are all capital cities of their respective countries. So I was just like, all right, fine. Capital city. I won't even be specific. I'll just be like, yep, those are all capitals. Everyone should be represented. The Capital City Jahmyr Cats. So I think a team name should be clever, some kind of clever pun on a player on your team, into an actual team's name. How would you feel about that?
I think it's authoritarian and restrictive, maybe a little draconian, but that's okay. I understand where you're coming from. I did tell Annie that I credit you with having some of the best team names, if not the best team name. They do fit a mold, which I think is important for quality. Yeah, it's easy to come up with a pun. Anybody can come up with a pun, but you're clearly putting some hurdles in front of yourself to,
I agree,
to challenge yourself even more, which, you got a PhD, Jimmy. Not everybody is going to be up to the task in the league. All right, so thank you to Annie. Again, if your wife and or girlfriend has a question, please send it in to HomeLeagePod Know You in League. Let's move on. We're going to do a little bit of a look back at the previous week. Obviously, quarter of the way through the season, a lot of people starting to maybe panic a little bit, react to the record a little bit. I know I certainly was before it changed, but any matchups, basically the way this will work is I'll bring up some matchups as we talk about them, but did anything stick out to you last week? Any matchups that you think jump out of the page that you would want to call out right away?
I mean, do I have to say it? What was he down? 48 points, 50 something? I didn't actually do the math.
I was telling myself 40, but I think it was more. Going into halftime.
The very last game of the match. Yeah, oh my God. Oh yeah, going into halftime, Dak wasn't doing anything. It was a miserable game. But Brendan versus Jack, I think, was the surprise of the week. Brendan, I think, came in winless. Jack came in undefeated. Brendan actually came in at the bottom of the standings and had a fantastic game. I think, what was it? Pickens had 27. Josh Jacobs had 26. And he ends up scoring over 100 points and beating you at the last minute. It's the kind of situation where if you weren't on the West Coast, you probably would have gone to bed thinking I won this week.
I'd never have gone to bed.
You had to suffer through. You had to suffer through every touchdown, all 4 touchdowns, I think, between those 2 players.
Yeah, I made the joke that the only way I would lose if they scored 5 touchdowns in the second half, and I said it pretty condescendingly. I will say it was a great performance by Brendan's team, but it will probably be remembered as the Kenny Gainwell scandal matchup, not necessarily the Brendan comeback scandal. Or comeback matchup.
A scandal, he called it.
A little bit of a scandal. Time zones probably.
Is it a scandal to sleep through the inactives?
It's a scandal to announce that he was expected to play so early. Anyway.
Yeah, that is frustrating, to be fair. They're not often wrong about that, like when they come out with anything, you know?
It said expected. Other posts I did look will say will. So expected versus will is a nuance that I have to pay attention to now. I'm going to ask a more pointed question. Do you think that there were any matchups that were must-wins? Obviously, Brendan was a big one, but do you think that there were any other must-win matchups for any teams this early, or are you somebody who kind of thinks, hey, let the first quarter of the season shake out, and really there's no position that can't be overcome?
You know, it's always tough to go into week 4 without a win. So I think, let's see, Bill played Ty. So I think you guys both had tough matchups. I think Ty was also undefeated going into that game. So I think between Bill and Brendan, there was must-wins for both of them, you know. We have seen it, however. I do want to reiterate that we have seen it, that teams have come back from worse and done pretty damn well after struggling through 4 or 5 weeks. But, you know, it was tough for Bill to lose, especially the way that he did, you know, to score 100 points and then still lose, you know.
Yeah, it definitely brings up some challenges. I think some challenges with head-to-head scoring. You know, obviously median scoring might be something that gets a little more popular as things go on. All right, let's pull up. I liked this matchup. Evan, how do you think Evan should be feeling right now? Do you think that he should be kind of just disappointed that his team hasn't lined up? You know, obviously Omarion Hampton coming out, getting that, you know, that lead role. You've got, you know, Chris Godwin coming back now on the roster. You've got Drake May performing really, really well for a fantasy QB. Do you think that there is more cause for cautious optimism in Evan's world, or do you think that he should be kind of starting to hit the panic button and maybe really thinking about making some aggressive trades?
I think I'd probably be on the optimistic side. You know, I'm not overly optimistic, but I'd say his team is kind of bottomed out at this point. I don't see it having worse weeks than it's been having lately. Bowers hasn't played up to his draft capital, and I genuinely think that Jake Browning can't be as bad as he's been playing for Cincinnati. So Lamar will do better, I think. So I think there's reasons for Evan to be optimistic. He's been kind of on both ends of the injury bug. Najee injury helped Hampton. The Burrow injury hurt Chase. So we'll see. But I do think that when you look at his better weeks versus his worse weeks, he'll be closer to those higher peaks as the season goes on.
I like it. Yeah, looking at on the other side, you know, Glenn going to 4-0, obviously getting a couple more running backs than maybe he was anticipating out of his draft with ETN playing so well, Breece Hall being serviceable, and then obviously Judkins getting into the Browns lineup so quickly. It's been really not too much to dwell on with Glenn. It's just been impressive to see him overcome Lamb, Lamb getting injured, and then AJ Brown obviously not coming through as a second round pick so far.
Stacked, yeah. Glenn stacked.
So a little scary, as he always is. Moving on to another matchup, one with a little bit more heartbreak kind of all around. Ryan obviously comes away with a strong victory. Justin Fields and Romeo Doubs show up on the primetime matchups. And then Jesse, unfortunately, just a couple of flat, Trey Benson getting hurt after he lost James Conner. And then Brian Thomas Jr. just having a really, really disappointing season. That being said, with the injuries to the Bengals offense and to now Malik Neighbors, do you think that Jesse, even though he lost this matchup, is maybe in a better spot moving forward?
I think that's probably fair to say because he's got people coming back. He's got Kittle coming back. I think Kittle was his third round pick. It's tough to lose that guy in week 2 when he was going to be a big producer for you. He's been trying to kind of compensate at tight end. He had a big game from Tucker Kraft 1 week, but otherwise, I think he's in a better spot than Ryan. I mean, losing Malik Neighbors, that's not a guy you can replace. That's, I think, your first round pick. And I think Ryan's in a confusing spot because he's the one person in the league that has 2 QBs that are worth playing every week. He's going to have to make a decision. And I think so far he's done pretty well making that call. I think Justin Fields has been great. But I think, that's just going to be another decision, in his mind at the end of every day.
Absolutely. All right. Let's see. Any other? Obviously, we'll just jump in real quick to this one. We saw Steve go down to Ned. Obviously, Steve, one of our few remaining undefeated teams prior to the week. And Ned, with another strong but not overwhelming performance. Genty finally shows some life against a Bears defense that was looking a little bit rough. Are you believing in Mahomes as a viable fantasy quarterback this year? Are you buying the way he's playing with his rushing, or are you feeling like this is maybe just a hot streak and he's probably going to level out to where he's been historically, the last 2-3 years, fantasy-wise?
I think I'm buying it. I don't necessarily buy that he's going to have to run the same way that he has been. He's going to have guys coming back. I mean, Worthy just came back recently, and he's going to have Rashee Rice, who's going to make a huge difference on your team once he returns. So I buy that he's going to be a top 5 quarterback the rest of the way, top 6, top 5 quarterback the rest of the way. But I wouldn't necessarily bank on it being because of his legs. I think he's going to be able to throw the ball a little bit more down the last 10 games of the season.
All right, and we'll ask you one other question. Do you think Genty, do you think this is more where he's going? He's got the stance back. He's back to looking like a serial killer in the backfield. Do you think that he finishes, paying off that top 10 draft capital, or do you think that, the Raiders are maybe just a little bit too weak on the offensive line, not really going to be a great rushing team regardless?
I think, obviously he's not going to have games like this every week, but I feel like he's going to be more towards an RB1 than an RB2 going forward, And also shout out to Dan's team because I think he scored over 90 points with no touchdowns from anyone but his QB and his running back 1. I think everyone else was just, medium to high yardage. And that's
Chris Olave snuck in for a touchdown in there, and at one point, I think
he got a touchdown.
He did, yes.
Oh, but he threw an interception, right?
He did, yes.
He threw an interception. Yes. Okay, so I looked at his point total, and I think he was under the amount you'd expect for a touchdown.
True, yeah, he had 6.
Fair enough.
So 6.
But either way, GT is a great sign for Dan's team. If he doesn't have to worry about that RB1 spot, then he can actually afford to make some moves now, like he's been trying to do. Someone make some trades.
We know he wants to get rid of all of his team, despite how good they are. All right, let's move on to standings and power rankings really quickly. I will be fully transparent. I can no longer see the time tracker on my recording, and I'm terribly concerned that it's not recording. But I'm not going to hit stop recording because then who knows what would happen. So we are at the power rankings and standings portion. I will, full disclosure, the ESPN app seems to change power rankings based on your current lineup. So it doesn't look at your bench. It doesn't look at anything like that. It looks at who is in your lineup. So not really reliable, but do you think, who do you think is the biggest maybe deviation from where their standing is versus where you would maybe put them power ranking wise, whether that's a team that, you think should be higher based on where their record is, or maybe one that's a little inflated and is going to probably settle back down to the mean?
Well, it's interesting. I noticed a few things. I think, and I think it might have changed since I last looked at it. But last I saw, I think Bill, who was projected to be first when the draft ended, was now projected to be last. And then Glenn, who was projected to be last, is now projected to be first. I find that hilarious. It just shows how little ESPN knows going into the season. Mm-hmm. But if that is the case, and it was last time I looked, I would say that Bill's team is the most unfortunate situation the league has seen in a little while. I think his team is not the worst team in the league. I think it should not be ranked 12th or even bottom 3 in the power rankings. I think it's potentially a top 7 roster that's just gotten unlucky. And if you look at the standings, it kind of reflects that. He's got more points for than like 6 of the next 7 teams ahead of him.
Yep.
He's just been getting screwed.
Yeah, two back-to-back weeks, I believe, facing the highest score, or one of the highest scores, if not the. So definitely tough. I would throw out Jesse too. I know he's pretty bummed, and like you said, he's been a little bit beat up in the beginning, but I do think that his team has the potential to bounce back. And I think Derrick Henry will be probably a big part of that. Alrighty.
Yeah.
So moving quickly ahead. So now we kind of get into the look ahead, and we will start with your matchup. So we've got Jameer Katz versus Bill. I'm not going to say his full name. So don't want to get flagged on YouTube here. But you picked up Dak Prescott. Obviously, Lamar goes down for a couple of weeks. Doesn't look like a major injury. But how are you feeling? Are any players on Bill's team that are keeping you up at night? Any players that are in your team that maybe you're expecting a little bit more than what they're projected for? Anything jump out to you?
Well, I touched on it a little earlier that I think this matchup in particular is really impacted by buys and injuries. I have 2 starters out. Bill's got 2 starters out between his quarterback and Metcalf, and I have 2 wide receivers. So that and being without Lamar, I feel like I'm really debating trading for some other players that are on bye. That's kind of the way I'm headed with this matchup. I'm not optimistic. I really think, if I was a betting man, I'd put money on Bill's team this week. And that's not an intentional neg. That's just me being honest. That I'm projected
neg.
Like 77.
Yeah.
Unless Malik Washington literally becomes Tyreek Hill overnight, I don't see it happening.
That's fair. All right, we'll keep things brief. Don't want to try to predict the future too much. Jumping ahead, we've got Steve versus Ryan. Obviously, Ryan, first week without Malik Neighbors. He's looking to make some magic happen. He's obviously got, he's got Garrett Wilson. He's got Jackson Smith and Jigba. But then Steve has just been kind of a powerhouse between Jonathan Taylor, who gets the Raiders, and then Amon-Ra St. Brown, who gets the Bengals. Do you think Steve gets back to his winning ways, or do you think Ryan is able to kind of overcome some of his injuries here?
I do think Ryan's got too many injuries at wide receiver. If I had to bet, I'd put money on Steve. But I do want to say that to either of these guys, I will trade you a tight end.
Yeah, if the Browns have 2 tight ends, they probably don't have one. Although Fanning Jr. looks pretty good for a prospect. Yeah, that'll be an interesting matchup. Interesting to see if these lineups stay the same. I actually do think that Steve is a little bit vulnerable to spend, and Ryan's wide receivers I still are a pretty strong part of his team. I think if he can get Henderson going or Brown. I don't know if Brown will get going, but I think he's a little bit more alive than maybe given credit for, and the fact that he's 2-2, things could be worse. All right, moving along. So we've got another desperate matchup for half of this. Ned obviously looking to go to 4-1, battle out for maybe a first place spot, and then we've got Rillo, who is looking to get back in the winner's bracket after another loss last week. Rillo's actually projected to win here. Do you think that we see a surprise upset, or do you think that Rillo puts together a strong performance with some of these projections?
I do think Rillo's lineup looks like kind of surprisingly well-rounded, considering he just lost Tyreek Hill. Mm-hmm. But I do think I'd favor Dan in the matchup. Gene T's coming out party last week. Hurts has been so solid. Even when the Eagles' offense has been kind of sputtering along, he's the only thing that works around there. So I do think he's got some consistent pieces, and I think I'd put money on Dan this week.
I'm actually going to go the opposite way. I think Rillo, I agree. I liked Rillo against the week that he played Bill. I thought his team, they got the right matchups. They really could go after it. Keenan Allen and Washington, I think, could start to really pile on. And then Kenneth Walker, going against Tampa Bay could be a little bit tough, but they've been beat up. So who knows how much they will be able to make the ball move and keep their defense off the field. All right. Going quickly here, we've got Tyler gets back into the win column, 3-1, and then Brendan obviously looking to capitalize, although I believe this is the lowest point total. Tyler dealing with, I think, a couple of buys, obviously some injuries, T. Higgins being a little bit of a letdown, and then Brendan down now, Bucky Irving, who was seen in a boot. So he's picked up Sean Tucker. Anything you're seeing from this matchup that you think is worth calling out? What do you, any predictions that you have?
I mean, you called out the projected point total. I don't know that we've seen one this low in a while. I mean, it's got a lot to do with injuries and bye weeks, just like my matchup with Bill. It was cool to see, Stephon Diggs get back on track last week. He had like 100 yards for the first time in like a season and a half or something like that. And I do think that Wan'Dale Robinson's going to get more volume now that Neighbors is out. If Jaden Daniels plays, I'm picking Ty. If Jaden Daniels doesn't play, I think I'd go the other way and pick Brendan.
I dig it. I think Jaden Daniels was cleared to practice today, so I don't think he's even on the injury report. So he should be playing.
No kidding.
Yeah. All right. We're going to go in. These next two matchups, I would say, are the matchups of the week for completely opposite reasons. We're going to start with the first one, which I'm dubbing the sad boy matchup of the week. We talked about it earlier. Both two people dealing with some injuries, dealing with maybe some disappointing fumbles of the football, we'll call it, not literally, but just the way that things have broken their way. Obviously, we can't see who Jesse is playing this week yet. He has told his team that they're all benched, which other than Leonard Fournette, who's not in the league. I like this move by Jesse to kind of keep your players motivated. Don't let anybody think that they've earned a starting spot when they haven't. And then obviously, Evan projected around 85. Pretty moderate score for the league this year and with our current settings. But I know it's hard to predict. But anything you feel worth talking about with this matchup, any particular matchups or players that you are excited to see?
Well, I want to first shout out Jesse for maturing. I appreciate that. Instead of dropping all your players, you only benched them. That's less work for me, so I appreciate that. But I do think that Evan's players just seem to have the better matchup. A lot of these, both of these guys have seen like their studs struggle recently between Henry, Jamar Chase, Bowers, and so on. But Evan's got Jamar Chase in Detroit, which obviously means Jameson Williams is in Cincinnati. Marion Hampton has come alive, and he's playing in Washington. So I think Evan's got too many advantageous matchups, and, he'd be my pick.
Yeah, and I think Chris Godwin's going to keep ramping up as he gets a little bit healthier. All right, and the final matchup for this week, I was hoping that it was going to be a battle of the undefeateds, but that was spoiled a week early. We've got myself versus Glenn. Who do you think is going to be closer to their projected total? And that could either be because nobody does better than what they're projected for, or because nobody actually does as well as they're projected for. But who do you think, which one would you say is more likely of these two projected totals?
Oh, man. Glenn's projected total.
His, and just because you can't see it, Glenn's is 92 and mine is 103.
Yeah, because you have what, QB1, you have wide receiver 1, you have like a top 3 tight end too. So it's hard to say. I'd say Glenn probably finished closer to his point total because it's a more reasonable number to hit if you're asking specifically about the projections. I think he could easily go past it, AJ Brown's projections have continued to fall, and he could very easily go for 150 yards and a touchdown, or 2 touchdowns on any given week. That's
a very good point. Yeah, he's down. So, looking at it now, he's down to 9, and for reference, Puka's up at 14, just for comparison. All right.
Well, I don't think that's an over exaggeration for Puka. He's been unbelievable.
Yeah, he's been nice. Yeah, surprising that he went so far. Maybe one day we'll do a debrief on that. All right.
Still taking Glenn.
That brings us through all of our matchups. All right, our next segment, Jimmy, we've given you a little bit of a heads up, and I wasn't supposed to spoil that, but we've been talking for too long, and now I'm just melting in the spot. But we are going to do a 18-second, 6-team parlay, 1 touchdown from every matchup. I don't have a timer. There's nothing to refer to. I can bring it up on my phone, though. So 18 seconds, Jimmy. Give us your parlay.
All right, first player I'm taking is Woody Marks, who's getting more playing time. No Lamar in Baltimore. I think they're going to run the ball. David Montgomery playing Cincinnati. It's going to be a high-scoring game. T. Higgins is going to score. Jake Browning can't be this bad. Chris Godwin, Rachaad White, Bucky's in a boot. And Travis Kelce hasn't scored since week 1.
I love it. He does it in just 18 seconds, right on the money.
It was under 18.
It was under 18. I didn't start it. I started it too early. So, perfect. Very nice. We will put those odds. We'll try to post the odds in the comments. Guess the odds in the comments before I post them. All right. So our final segment, and let me just make sure it is indeed our final segment. I have no idea how many minutes we are at. It's been a fun one. We're learning every day.
It can't be more than 40.
Yeah, I think we're under 40. So what's anyone doing? They're just going to put it on the background. So anyway, Jimmy, thank you for joining us again. You face Bill this week. Big 2-2 matchup. Thank you for coming on the pod, and I'm going to pass it over to you. What do you have going on in your life? We're calling this the catch up. Everyone's going to make fun of that. But we're calling it the catch up. What do you got going on in your life? How have you been? Anything you want to share with the chat?
It's like Hot Ones, right? I got to look at this camera on, this camera
look
on,
around.
this camera on to everybody.
It's my Sean Evans moment.
Cool. I got a book. I made a book. I published a book. Do you have a picture of it?
Yeah, it's
if
up.
I send
you
you a
can't see
picture,
it.
do you have a picture of it?
It is up.
Cool. Okay. I can't see it, but you guys can see it.
Do you want me to read the
published a
title? Or would you like to announce it? No, you.
No, I'll announce it. All right. It's called AI and Gamification Technologies for Complex Work. None of you are going to want to read it. It's actually kind of boring. I didn't write the whole thing. I published it. I'm the editor. I wrote 2 chapters. I didn't write the whole thing. I actually talked to Steve's boss about it. Then he ghosted me. Anyway, buy the book because I make 5% on every purchase.
Oh, all right. Can I ask which chapters you wrote?
Chapter 2 and 4.
Okay.
We did a study, and again, no one's going to care. We did a study on how effective this drone simulation training software is, and we published it. And then we did this analysis of how games and training are growing in the industry and stuff like that. Those are the 2 chapters.
What are the odds that one of us in chat is killed by a drone before the end of our lives?
Yeah, 1 in 50.
That's not 0. All right. Thank you, Jimmy. We appreciate your time on the pod. We will see you next week, and good luck to that parlay.
Appreciate it, Jack. Thanks.